Hello my viewers and welcome back to my channel. I welcome you to another thought-provoking discussion. Now today we take a look into the complexities of safety, artisanship and international perspectives. In this video, a Mexican man's viral video sparked a necessary conversation when he challenged Black Americans' inquiries about Mexico's safety. Now he pointed out the hypocrisy of seeking refuge abroad while ignoring systemic issues in the US, highlighting stark contrast between the two countries. Now, his words struck a chord, citing Mexico's progress in areas like racial representation and profiling. However, not everyone shared his optimism. A sister's poignant response pointed out the harsh realities of anti-Blackness and colonialism within brown and indigenous communities, emphasizing that these issues extend beyond U.S. borders. Now, for some, they feel Mexico is where dreams become realized. So with that said, let's take a look at these different videos. I will be right back, and when I get back, we talk more about this.
Why do Black Americans keep asking me if it's safe to visit Mexico? You're a Black person living in the USA. I think you're asking the wrong questions. Don't let the US propaganda get to you. We don't have sundown towns in Mexico. We don't have politicians constantly trying to gerrymander and redistribute district lines to diminish your vote. Mexico doesn't have Confederate statues in front of government buildings. Our second president ever was a Black man. When did the US get their first Black president? None of your neighbors in Mexico will ever call the police on you because you look suspicious. No police officer is ever going to pull you over here in Mexico because you match the description. Despite being a US citizen in the US, they will always treat you as a second-class citizen. I know that the USA has done you guys dirty for most of its history, but not every country is as messed up as the USA, guys. The worst thing that can happen to you here in Mexico is you get a stomach ache because you had a great night with great food. But anyways, instead of asking, is Mexico safe to visit? Take a look around you. But anyways, what do I know? Let me know what you guys think.
This guy, if it's safe to be there, is really silly, because why would you ever ask the dominant culture if it's safe to be there as a marginalized group? That's like asking a white man if it's safe to be here in America as a Black person. Instead, ask other marginalized people, specifically Black Mexicans exist, or Black people who have traveled to Mexico also exist. Those are easy, very much more verifiable and trustworthy source. And let's not pretend that racism doesn't exist in Mexico. It's very prominent in Mexico. It's actually core and foundational. That's why Mexico has a caste system that still is in service today. And that's why I called him part of the favored class or the ruling class or whatever I said, because he's part of the people that have Eurocentric features and lighter skin. And those are the two things that make you the most valuable type of Mexican. And that is why the people who are overrepresented in media and anyone else is underrepresented or represented in very specific character tropes. So I always caution people that are traveling who are Black to learn the slurs for Black people in the place they're going to, because there are slurs for Black people in basically every language as far as I've seen. And Mexico is no different. Mexican Spanish has exclusive slurs to Black people that aren't found in other Spanish-speaking countries. So there's that. And while there are intense levels of racism that are insanely mind-boggling, like rejecting Black people from going to the hospital and letting them die as a result, that's fairly common. But if you're a tourist and you're just going to all the touristy spots, at most you'll feel the microaggressions or macroaggressions of people touching your hair without your consent, taking photos of you without your consent, calling you things like a monkey without your consent, people making fun of you also is another thing. Those are all very common. Shoulder checking is another very common thing. And sometimes spitting in your general direction is a thing. And I just want to add that in that video, he says that there isn't racism in Mexico because they had a Black president a long time ago. And that is the same argument they use for Obama, saying that racism ended or is a lot less now because Obama was president. And I'm going to tell you that it doesn't matter. That's not a very good argument. And also, because you are part of the ruling class, maybe don't talk about the marginalized groups because you don't know. And you keep ignoring the injustices that the marginalized groups in Mexico face. So maybe shut up.
Your point, but this is kind of tone deaf. Black Americans know that we have to ask this question when we want to live anywhere, visit anywhere, because the United States is not the only place that is dangerous for Black Americans or Black people in general. And can we please not pretend that anti-Blackness and colorism is not a thing in brown communities, in indigenous communities as well? It doesn't mean that it's every single person, but it's enough. And when you have that plus racist people. So I get your point, but like, tone deaf and very weird way to get there. So I think the better question is, why do we have to ask the question, right? And then we can actually get into the conversation that should be had. Not that Black people are buying into propaganda.
So one of the main reasons that people freak out when you say that you want to travel, especially solo travel to Mexico, is because of the heavy negative stigma that Mexicans have in the United States, which is all built upon falsehoods and propaganda, stereotypes, racism, etc. Obviously, wherever you go in the world, there is something going on there. But newsflash, when I was in Mexico and when I went there, solo traveled, backpacked for 5 months, no plan. I was living with families, babe. I was in the neighborhoods. I wasn't in no tourist shit. I was when I chose to be. But in general, I was living like a local Mexican. I was so fulfilled. And at the base level, Mexicans simply care about love and respect. Everywhere you go, it's hola, ¿cómo estás? You make eye contact with somebody. It's buen dia, buenas tardes. At the barest of minimum in Mexico, they see you as humans. The Mexican people have healed my soul and my spirit simply because they value the human experience, connectivity, love, honor, and respect. I can only speak highly of the Mexican people because they are what helped me feel confident enough to be myself. And it's so sad that in Mexico, they just have this terrible reputation, but that's actually because they're great people. And you'll find that in this lifetime, a lot of things are inverted. You know, there's a reason why they try to keep you away from Mexico. Because maybe, just maybe, the people, the land, the atmosphere, and the spirit over there is beyond logic. They are some of the most magical people walking this earth simply because they choose to walk in love most of the time.
Hey, my name is Tracy, and I moved to Mexico from Atlanta, Georgia in August of last year. And I want to say this, I think Mexico is going to be the new haven for Black people. Hear me out. So I recently saw a post by our African American sister who is in Mexico City, and she owns Blaxicochina. And she said something that resonated with me. She said in the United States, Black people didn't have the chance to be actually realized. So what does that mean? Meaning their dreams, their deepest desires, their manifestations, all of the things to be actually realized, not just for one, but for many people. And what a lot of people don't realize is that during the slave trade time and in slavery, a lot of enslaved people from Texas and, Texas and Oklahoma migrated into Mexico, and Mexico has always been a safe haven for Black people. So yes, I understand there are a lot of people moving of all different nationalities to Mexico, but people really don't understand the deep, rich history that Black people have and Mexican people have, and how it has always been a place where Mexico has opened their arms to us specifically. And even now here on TikTok that I'm more visible and I talk about it, or even just my everyday interaction with Mexican people, they say, welcome home. When I tell you there are so many Black people here who are starting businesses, who are, maybe they had a dream of being a chef, but they couldn't because of the pressures of the United States and the demands of the United States, but they released that and they came to Mexico, and now they have their products in stores. Shout out to Jackie. They have, their catering, selling their cuisine, their ethnic cuisine to people's homes, and people are actually buying them. What else? There are people who are just actually moving in the place and space of, this is what I want to do with my life. This is the creative outlet that I've always wanted to explore. And because Mexico doesn't have the demands on us as Black people as in the United States and everywhere else, it seems like they are loving and gracious and grateful, and we're community with one another. It makes it easier for us to integrate our lives into this place and space, as long as we do it respectfully, humbly, and we are trying to get one with the culture that we have immersed ourselves into. to have your dreams actually realized. So if you are a person who is struggling with living in the United States, the pressures of the United States, you are depressed, when I just tell you, just take a trip, it's not far. I'm from Oakland, California, and I moved to Atlanta, Georgia. When I tell you I am further away from California, where my mama is, when I was in Atlanta versus when I'm here. So Mexico is going to be the new Black haven because there are so many Black people here who are thriving. They are reinventing their lives. They are doing the things that they truly have desired to do. One sister I know, she sings all the time, but just because of the pressures in the States, she wasn't able to. I know a couple of women who are out here doing that. So what I'm saying is, it's the place of dreams being realized.
Is Mexico safe for travelers? Now, here's what I found. According to research, in the US, Mexico has the reputation of being dangerous and violent due to the high-profile D-trade and powerful cartels. Now, this viewpoint predominantly spread by sensational media reports and often politically motivated discourse does not at all represent the true nature of Mexico's safety situation. In fact, the actual condition in many Mexican cities contradicts these widely held perceptions. While it is true that Mexico faces challenges related to organized crime, it's important to understand that most of the violence is concentrated in specific areas and is often linked to criminal activities such as de-trafficking and human trafficking. Now, these incidents primarily affect only those directly involved in these illicit operations. Many Mexican cities and regions, including popular tourist destinations, are very safe for both visitors and residents. In fact, several Mexican cities have lower crime rates than some hometowns in the United States. And it's very important to consider that safety can vary within a country, and generalizations can perpetuate misconceptions. Now, the misconception that Mexico is broadly unsafe overlooks the reality that if an individual is not directly involved in the D-trade or human trafficking, their risk of falling victim to violence is very low. Many Mexican cities and towns are characterized by a strong sense of community, vibrant cultural traditions, and local police efforts to maintain safety and order. Now, the country's tourism hubs and hotspots are heavily patrolled and secured due to the industry's importance to Mexico's economy. The metrics that is used to measure safety can be applied to all of Mexico, just as it isn't for any other country. It's important to emphasize that cases of violent crime or H-side in Mexico are typically more localized and targeted compared to the random acts of violence often seen in the US. Now, one of the most damaging, misleading, and inaccurate warnings published about crime in Mexico and places to avoid comes from the U.S. State Department, which unfortunately garners a considerable amount of credibility with its assessments. Now, their reports and warnings about Mexico often paint a grim and generalized picture of the entire country, which can be both misleading and damaging to Mexico's reputation and tourism industry. Now, these warnings frequently fail to differentiate between regions, suggesting that the entire country is equally dangerous. This would be like issuing a warning against travel to the entire US because of high crime rates in Chicago or Los Angeles. Now, the advisories from the State Department rely on crime statistics that can be quite misleading. For instance, a city may have a high crime rate due to specific types of crime that are unlikely to affect tourists. In the process of researching this article and examining the online crime reports on Mexico made available by the US, the researcher realized that they were often presented as if coming from a country that was viewed globally as a beacon of safety. And this is what naturally piqued the researchers' interest regarding the crime rates in the United States. So in the spirit of fairness and impartiality, they needed to explore this angle as well. Now, in recent years, there has been growing concern internationally for the prevalence and seemingly random nature of pew-pew violence in the United States. It has caused many to reconsider or outright cancel their travel plans to the US due to concerns for their own safety. Now, this growing concern is rooted in the frequent reports of random pew-pew related crimes and the widespread accessibility of pew-pews in the US, which together create a perception of a heightened risk compared to other developed nations. Now, the essence of the concern lies in how random the violence is in the United States. Unlike in many other countries where safety risks might be more predictable or localized to certain areas, the nature of pew-pew violence in the US is such that it can occur in places traditionally seen as safe and neutral, like schools, places of worship, shopping centers, and entertainment venues. Now, this This unpredictability creates an added risk that is difficult for travelers to navigate or mitigate through planning. The fact that such incidents have occurred in tourist popular cities only heightens the anxiety. Now, this growing concern is not unfounded. According to the research, the US has significantly higher rate of pew-pew-related unalivings compared to other high-income countries. Furthermore, high-profile mass unalivings and the media coverage that accompanies them have contributed a global perception of the US as a country grappling with a serious pew-pew violence problem. Now, this perception is bolstered by travel advisories from several countries, warning their citizens of the risks associated with traveling to the US. For international visitors, the issue is compounded by their unfamiliarity with local pew-pew laws, which can vary dramatically from state to state. Now, the ease of access to pew-pewings, including high-capacity weapons, in some areas of the country contrasts starkly with the tight pew-pew control measures in place in many other developed nations. Now, this all contributes to a sense of unease and vulnerability for visitors who are unaccustomed to such lenient pew-pew regulations. Now, the debate rages on: is Mexico a haven for travelers or a haven for danger? Articles and reports paint conflicting pictures, some warn of rampant crime and violence, while others highlight vibrant culture and welcoming communities. But I want to hear from you, my viewers. Have you visited Mexico? What was your experience like? Did you feel safe exploring the cities, beaches, or countryside? Share your stories, both positive and negative. Did you encounter any issues, or were you charmed by the hospitality? Your first-hand accounts will help shed light on the realities of traveling in Mexico. So let's get started. Share your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you for always watching, and see you in my next video as I bring you another interesting video.